On the second day of life, Master True Love gave to me 2 testaments. You'll get the rest later. So welcome back to our short live streams on the 12 days of live mass. And today's quick little live stream is about the 2 testaments of the Bible. I've seen on social media, God help us, recently, again, the old discussions about how the Bible contradicts itself, particularly between the Old and the New Testament in relation to the nature of God. And I thought I'd kind of try to take a few minutes to retread very, very worn ground and cover 2 points about how they don't actually contradict themselves. For one, the Old Testament, yes, it's much more puritanical, no doubt about it. But remember, when we go to the New Testament, Jesus is saying that he came to fulfill the law, not abolish it. This is why it's difficult when people try to legitimize things by saying, well, Jesus didn't specifically condemn that. Well, no, because if Jesus' ministry depended on him condemning, making a list of do's and don'ts, he would have never gotten around to anything else. And the Bible would be, 5 of these. And I know the lawyers about it, and that's legalism, by the way. If that's what you want, an exhaustive list of do's and don'ts, well, that's called religion. Remember, the strictest 10th term. And that's not what Jesus was about. Jesus was about reconnecting with mankind. And yes, you could look at the law in the Old Testament as 2 forms, the puritanical law and the moral law. I'm being hypersimplistic. I'm sure theologians have gone into far more nitty-gritty than anyone cares to. But the puritanical law would be the ones that remove the sin, the sacrifices, the what to do to stay out of the camp, how to stay clean, things like that. And then the moral law would be the no killing, don't cheat on your spouse, that sort of thing. Now, the moral law we still are obliged to. We're still technically obliged to the puritanical law, but we don't have to worry about it because Jesus fulfilled that. So Jesus coming to fulfill the law means that we don't have to do stuff anymore. Jesus never came out and said, you don't have to do the law anymore, or rather, excuse me, you don't have to worry about the moral stuff, or don't worry about all that Old Testament stuff. We're not worried about that anymore. No, Jesus said, that's still in place, but I'm going to stand in your place to take care of it. That's what it means by paying your debt. That's what freedom from sin means, as a gift that Jesus gave you, freedom that you don't have to do any of those things. So, is the Old Testament a little different? Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's contradictory. It's just God always intended for Jesus to negate the need to do sacrifices because you constantly had to do it. This was God's plan all along. Just think of it this way. It's like saying that because we've amended the Constitution, the country ceases to be. Well, you could argue depending on how you amend it, but because you amended it and the 13th Amendment doesn't make America America anymore because we don't have slavery. Well, no, it just means it's different now. It means we're actually starting to fulfill that everyone equal under God kind of thing. So that doesn't mean we're contradicting. That means we're fulfilling and getting closer to the ideal. And that's what God was trying to do. God was basically saying, here's the standard. Here's how you're supposed to fulfill it. That's the first thing. The second thing about the contradiction I often see is the nature of God. Well, the Old Testament God was foul and furious and hated everyone, but then New Testament comes along and buddy Jesus. Well, 2 things to consider about that. First, Jesus had, 32 years on this earth? Okay, sorry, everyone. Apparently, my phone is blowing up at this exact moment. But he had 32 years on this earth? And God had however many centuries in interactions with his people? Now, that doesn't mean Jesus isn't a God, but that means that in the course of the New Testament, compared to Jesus's life, Jesus really was focusing on one thing, bringing about salvation, the gospel. That was his laser focused intent. God, when you read the Old Testament, it's the history of all the interactions with his people and humanity up until the silence between the New and Old Testament. Meaning you're going to get to see every part. Liken it to this. Actually, let me give you some Bible verses before I liken it. So if you look at Jonah 4:2, where Jonah says, the prophet says, I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. If you look at some other verses, I'm not going to quote them, but I will throw them out at you here. Exodus 34:6, Numbers 14:18, Deuteronomy 4:31, Nehemiah 9:17, Psalm 86:5, Psalm 15, Psalm 108:4, Joel 2:13. That's another one. They all say pretty much the same thing. They all just copy off each other because that theme is persistent. When you look at the prophets, God sent prophets over decades warning the Israelis to turn, or the Jews to turn from their ways. This doesn't sound like a guy that is getting you right away. It sounds like a guy who's pleading to end the decadence. And only then does he punish. It reminds me of, and let's get back to the example. It reminds me when I was a substitute teacher and students would push me and then they would just keep saying one more chance, one more chance, one more chance. And eventually I'd pull out that write-up slip or call security or do whatever. And now I was considered the jerk because now I was doing something about it. Now I was disciplining because I decided that no more chances. Think of it this way, going back to the idea of Jesus 30 years, God for several centuries or more, for thousands of years. If you are with someone long enough, you get to see them more. Let me use the example of my wife. I love her dearly, and she loves me dearly. But we live with each other, and occasionally there's days we get on each other's nerves. It's just normal. That doesn't mean we stop loving each other. That doesn't mean we hate each other. We don't hate each other, but it doesn't mean the marriage is damaged. It just means we see sides of each other that, that's not cool. And that's normal. That's in every relationship. Now imagine if I only saw my wife for, say, several days. Well, then I'm going to think the fondest of her because we're going to have the most enjoyable moments. I'm only going to see her at her best, and she's only going to see me at my best, and we're going to enjoy the time we had. Does that mean that I got a full and total picture of that person? No. It means that I got a picture of just that moment. And so Jesus, being God, came with that laser intent focus to share the gospel. And that required carrying out the ministry the way he did. But the fact of the matter is, the Bible, if you read later in Revelation, when Jesus comes back to earth, he's not going to be buddy Jesus. He's going to be conquering warlord. And all of a sudden that Jesus would never do that. Jesus would never hurt someone. Well, there's a lot of evil people that are going to be singing a different tune. So it's not that God is contradictory. It's just you're seeing different snapshots of different people. So when you say when you say the testaments are not compatible, that the Bible is contradictory, well, yeah, at a cursory glance it is, but like everything else in life, context, context, context. One, this was an ongoing epic, an ongoing plan. Things changed. That doesn't mean that the Bible is contradictory. It just means things unfolded and were realized as God intended from the get-go. When sin happened, God promised a Savior, and it unfolded, and things changed. Not to God, of course, but to us it did, because we didn't have the big picture. And of course, the nature of God, the only reason the nature of God seems contradictory is you're taking one little snapshot of God in Jesus compared to centuries of God showing his whole character in the Old Testament. But the reality is it's the same guy. It's just different aspects. And on this holiday season, I just want you to know that he wants you to join him in that gospel so that you will never see him as anything but this guy, because this is who he wants to be. This is who he's meant to be, and the relationship is meant to be there. And that's what I hope you do in this holiday season, or any season. It doesn't have to be Christmas. If you ever want to learn more, you can talk to me, especially if you're at Parma Heights and 181 Youth Ministry. You could talk to me. You could talk to PD or Matt or any pastor, and we'll be happy. And I'm not a pastor, but any volunteer, we'd be happy to share the gospel with you, walk you through that. Whether you've done it and think, did I really take it seriously, or you've never done it. So hopefully that clears up some confusion, and expect another live stream today. I told you I got to cram these in soon.